Welcome, I'll be guiding you through completing the Doomspires, the 5th campaign of Combat Initiation. Although it's daunting, it's really not as hard as it seems, though X-ranking the level is a little more of a challenge as the amount of high threat enemies can get really infuriating. That being said, let's go! First, if you are looking to X-rank specifically, use the Relentless modifier. It will make waves go faster, which will assist you greatly in getting X-rank. It also mitigates the time you waste trying to find the one kill ball who is stuck in the goddamn tower! Second, if you only want Doomspires achievements, feel free to just skip to the Doomspires campaign. If you have not yet gotten your first complete, skip to the 4th campaign, Rocket Arena instead. Skipping campaigns will not invalidate any campaign-specific achievements, but do keep in mind that skipping anywhere past the 3rd campaign, Glass Houses will limit you to 1 server life, and skipping any number of campaigns will reduce your XP and player point reward. Let's first go over the enemies along with the map and the hazards on it, then you can decide on a build. There are 3 new enemies that appear in the Doomspires: Hunters, Smiths, and Contraps. Hunters are, I guess, sorta not new, because they are just Jasons with less health. Deal with them how you would with Jason. Despite their relatively large health pool of 3,500, they die very quickly if you parry them well, and they won't really be a problem if you're high up in the air. Though even if you're in the air, they can throw their chainsaw at you if you aren't high up enough. Smiths can best be described as slightly better in gimmicky troopers. They have a homing projectile attack, an attack that throws an array of bullets, and a melee attack if you get too close. However, their most threatening attack is definitely the charge. The charge can be interrupted by a time bomb or trowel or hammer wall. In the case of the trowel and hammer walls, it will insta-kill. The charge can also be parried, though the window is very small and you generally won't land it unless you are well prepared for it. Usually staying in the air will let you avoid the charge, but be careful whenever you're on the ground because the charge deals very large damage and can very easily catch you off guard. Smiths also only have 600 health, so they die hilariously fast. Contraps are probably the most annoying out of the bunch and will cause the most problems for you. When they see you, they will shoot you with their minigun, dealing 10 damage if it hits you. While initially you can just circle it, its tracking will get significantly better very quickly, which will prevent you from circling it. You can reset its tracking by triggering its knockoff attack by getting too close, or by hiding behind cover long enough for it to stop trying to shoot you. You can also do it by taking its head off, which can only be done with trowel, hammer, reflector, grappling hook, and anything in the rocket launcher branch, though you can only do this once. However, after taking its head off, you'll be able to parry its knockoff attack once. Do be aware that in Bloxers mode, after you take its head off, it will be enraged for 15 seconds first, which will render its knockoff attack unparryable. And even after not being enraged, the knockoff attack will be a precise parry instead. You can also get temporary relief from the minigun by throwing a super ball or cannonball towards the shots, which will reflect the shots back at the contract. The style bonus is also not chargeback, but just simply ricochet. The contract has 2,500 health, which is quite a lot of health for how much of a problem they can cause for you. Keep in mind that the most annoying enemies of the previous stages are still here. I generally prefer dealing with the wizards first, only stopping to kill the contract if it's genuinely getting in the way of killing the wizard too much. If a mark shoots at me, I usually have something in my loadout that can charge back the mark to kill it pretty easily. As for the beacons, you kinda just have to go out of your way to kill them, as long as there's nothing else that's getting in your way too much. Afterwards, the other enemies aren't too threatening, though be cautious of the Hunter and Smith. They can rack in lots of damage when you're not high in the air if you're not being careful. The one hazard you will notice the most in Doomspires is lightning. Lightning sparks will appear around you to indicate that lightning is tracking you. After a certain period of time, the lightning will stop tracking you and lightning particles will appear on wherever the lightning is going to be briefly before it strikes. In the air, this is rarely a problem as long as you're moving, and on the ground it takes 1 jump dash to get out of its AoE. It's able to kill enemies, it's able to fragment walls, and it's also able to set off certain map events. It also gives the lightning imbue, making this one of 4 non-exclusive methods to get this imbue. If you're good enough at the game and want to set up a bunch of Calamity subspace trip mines, you're going to love this map. Speaking of the map, let's talk about how you can use the map's layout and various props to your advantage. There's an underground bunker that can help you deal with lightning and has a few explosive tanks down there too, but there's not a lot of space to work with. Also, the oil tanks, the generators, and after wave 45, the secondary tower can all be destroyed to kill both enemies and yourself. The oil tanks can give the kaboom style bonus, and remember when I said that there are 4 non-exclusive methods to obtain lightning imbue? Well, the generators are also one of them. So that's 2 out of 4 non-exclusive methods to get the lightning imbue in the Doomspires, even if the generators is a one-time use per game. Again, go nuts with your friends for funny Calamity trip mine shenanigans. This map is wonderful for that. Unfortunately, I literally never use any of these intentionally, since the underground bunker is not useful enough for me to want to put myself in such a crammed area. And I simply don't find the oil tanks, the generators, and the tower useful enough to ever bother going through the hassle of destroying it. That being said, you can definitely intentionally use it to clear out a horde, just, again, make sure to not get hit yourself. I'm sure you know that there is no one correct loadout in combat initiation, and unless you're using seated gear, there's no guarantee you can get the single gear loadout you want. That said, I can give you a little bit of my personal advice on how to build your loadout. As usual, mobility is incredibly helpful. I usually like to use the umbrella and potentially the grappling hook depending on whether I'm planning to rocket train or not. I usually don't prefer the jet boots due to having slow field regeneration, but certainly not a bad pick, especially if you happen to be using something that synergizes with jet boots like Epic Sauce. Again, the most threatening enemies of the previous stages are still here. You're still going to have to worry about marks, beacons, and wizards. Beacons can be annoying if left unchecked, but can be pretty easily dealt with if you have the tools to pick them out quickly from a distance. Having something that can interrupt or charge back marks is helpful, and I personally like to charge back them. As for the wizards, well, good luck as usual, because even with the addition of contracts, these guys are still probably the single most annoying and difficult to take down enemies in the game. Thankfully, pretty much anything that you can charge back marks with, you can also countercast wizards with it. Finally, the new enemies. The smiths and hunters are rarely going to pose a problem for you if you have a decent loadout, except for the occasional smith charge, but the contracts absolutely will cause issues. Having some kind of tool to quickly pick them out is very nice. My personal picks would be Bazooka, Fully Charged Explosive Pinata, or a Slam Dunk if I have Slate Skin Potion and Cannonball. Overall, the point is, the Doomspires is an extremely chaotic map with a lot of stuff you have to deal with. With this considered, I would personally look for a loadout that has good ways to deal with anything and everything. I want options with both high single target damage, but also enough reliable crowd control to ensure clearing doesn't feel like a slog. I want options for certain annoying enemies, something to charge back a mark at the very least. And if all comes down to it, I want an option that can quickly burst fire an enemy if I really need to take down an important target. So for the weapon loadout I personally use, I use Sword and Slingshot, then work towards Cannonball to give me immediate access to Slash of Ticks 2 for extra damage. Afterwards, there are two freebie picks where I'm free to come up with some funny combinations. One combination I had fun with is Hammer and Explosive Pinata. I can use Slash of Ticks to charge the Pinata, then use the Hammer to hold onto it for later. This is not to mention the hammer being able to build, cover, and store various other projectiles if I want it. I can also just as easily replace one of those weapons with a bazooka. I can even grab a freeze ray if I really wanted one for whatever reason. Finally, if I have the ticks, I will end it off with a katana. Though this is probably the least important part of the build, considering that I'm usually not parry happy enough to justify needing the katana over the sword, which is why it's the final, why not if I can afford it upgrade. That said, you of course don't have to use this build. Firebrand Flamethrower build is as good as always, even though if you're looking for chargebacks, you're going to need something else like the Super Ball or Cannonball. Anything in the rocket launcher branch is pretty good to blast at painful enemies to deal with. The bazooka is my favorite due to fast reload speed, but you can also just as well use a multi-rocket launcher instead to deal massive damage to high priority targets. For specific gear loadouts, I already mentioned what utility gears I like, so let's get into the rest. I like the Slate Skin Potion because slams can be used for nukes to clear and slam dunks to take care of high priority targets. But the Decoy Deploy is a generally good pick for Doomspires to get enemies and the boss off of you. And the Epic Sauce is also a decent pick, especially if you have other gears to synergize with it. The Reflector is the Reflector. If you're good enough with it, you can do some shenanigans. Damn, you know how crazy I would be at this game if I could, actually consistently pull that off? The right survivability gear can absolutely work wonders in the Doomspires too. I particularly like the Blogsy Cola as it gives me lifesteal on anything and everything. If your build doesn't have lifesteal, well, now you have it, and if it does, well, you have more, and that never hurts. The Teddy Blockspin is also a really good pick since it literally lets you cheat death every 60 seconds. I think it's self-explanatory why that's so good. The previous two sections pretty much cover what you need to deal with enemies and what loadouts you should be considering, so let's head right into the boss. Doombringer has 3 phases. Once you whittle down his first health bar, he becomes enraged and enters second phase, and once you clear his second health bar, he enters his third phase. His first and second are rather similar, but his third phase is completely different, but is also the easiest phase of the boss. Let's first talk about his very starting attack. When the fight starts, he will first lock your mobility for a minute and monologue for about 30 seconds. As soon as he says, be prepared to dash back into the arena as he will launch you away from it. Remember, utility gears are locked so you won't be able to use them to make your way back to the platform if you're caught off guard. Afterwards, you kinda just hold W and avoid his attacks. Once he finishes the intro attack, he will obliterate the arena, spawning a new one. Your utility gears will still be locked for around 20 seconds after this, so try not to fall during this time. Afterwards, you'll be free to use them. First thing to note is that Doombringer has various attacks that are capable of destroying the arena. This just makes mobility even more important as the arena you can properly land on continues to shrink. Second is that he has several attacks that can spawn red crystals. The red crystals can be used to heal, so if you ever find yourself low, you can use the crystals instead of some kind of healing gear. And you can even use it to get slingshot pellets back. Third, don't get too far away from Doombringer's arena. If you get too far away, a hand will come and grab you and flick you back in while dealing damage to you. Doombringer's attacks are sequenced, however you really don't have to remember the order because most of the attacks are reactable enough that you can tell what he's going to do just by looking at him. Phase 2 does get a few new attacks, I suppose. Generally speaking, you don't need to worry too much about what those attacks specifically are. It's important if you're doing a gearless run because gears are the main way to quote-unquote cheese him. But since we're talking about with gear, let me just tell you every strategy. If you're using the Slate Skin potion, focus on using Slate Skin to just keep yourself alive instead. Chances are, with how much he moves around, you'll seldom find the opportunity to actually hit a good slam on him. So just use it for survivability, or if you have a bomb, you can also use it for nuking crystals. If you're using an epic sauce, I don't know what to tell you, man. I recommend you have at least one out of these three: Bloxy Cola, Cheeseburger, and Teddy Bloxpin. Without these, you might have a hard time dealing with stored damage, which is no good. With the decoy deploy, throw it out, and when Doombringer is distracted, you can use this opportunity to land hits on him. Once the decoy has exploded, you're relatively vulnerable, so focus on dodging Doombringer's attacks instead, and wait until the decoy is off cooldown again so you can use it and repeat. If you're using the reflector, you're probably playing around super parries. In which case, if you're good enough to consistently super parry, you don't need this guide at all, really. Again, once you empty his first 2 health bars, congratulations, the fight is almost over, but you still have a little more to go. He will scream before recovering a small portion of his health and keeping himself on a small platform, while launching you onto a platform way beneath him. During this phase, he will constantly cause shockwaves on the bottommost platform, and he will launch rockets at you every now and then. Your utility gears will once again be disabled, but only for 20 seconds. You're supposed to use the jump pads to get to him, though once your utility gear is re-enabled, you can just kinda use whatever and fly your way to him. Once you get up to Doombringer and deplete his health bar for the second time, all other platforms except the bottommost one will disappear as Doombringer plummets onto the platform below. He won't do anything to harm you anymore, and you will be prompted to finish him. Once you hit him, the environment will invert and you are free to just beat him up. There will also be no cooldown during this time, so you get to throw as much of a temper tantrum against this dude as you please. After about 10 seconds of this, the environment will return to normal as Doombringer slams against the skybox and slowly disintegrates into dust. Briefly afterwards, you'll be returned to the Doomspires. Congratulations, you have now completed the 5th and currently final campaign of Combat Initiation. Alright, I hope this helped. Make sure to subscribe, watch my other content, do stuff, and bye-bye.